This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today, we are talking to Clay McLeod Chapman. Clay is the author of a number of books, including Ghost Eaters, Whisper Down the Lane, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, What Kind of Mother, and Kill Your Darling. Although, in this episode, we don't talk about any of these books specifically, but have a broader conversation on creativity and writing. But if you're after specifics on his most recent books, Kill Your Darling and Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, do not worry, because that is coming next episode. We had an amazing nearly 3-hour conversation, so a lot that we really get into. And I have to say that it is always inspiring and interesting to have Clay on the show. He has an energy that few writers can rival, and I always go away from our conversations wanting to write and create more. So I think you're going to have the same happen to you, in fact. But before we jump in to the conversation with Clay, a quick advert break.
A brutal attack during a peaceful drive through the Irish countryside sets the stage for a grotesque tale of body horror, medical abuse, and occult conspiracy theory. Puppet's Banquet by Valkyrie LaCrue. Clay McLeod Chapman calls it a blissful injury upon the reader's psyche. Fans of Silent Hill, Hellraiser, and Cronenberg's The Brood will be consumed by its exquisite nightmares. Puppet's Banquet, out May 14th. Visit tenebraspress.com for more information. Coming in 2025 from I Write at Night Indie Horror Press, Royal Jelly by R.C. Housen. Ruby the Raven was once a fighter with a promising future. Then a brutal injury ended her career. After years of opiates and surgery, she's ready to move forward with her life. She's taken a new job, and while the salary is beyond her wildest dreams, the truths she will uncover are beyond her darkest nightmares. Will Ruby make it out of the building alive, or will the secrets that ooze beneath consume her completely? Royal Jelly is the devil's advocate meets phantasm for the 21st century.
Okay, with that said, here it is. It is Clay McLeod Chapman on This is Horror. Clay, welcome back to This is Horror.
Oh my God. I never want to leave, guys. I just want to stay here. Like, put me in some like folder, on your hard drive desktop, and I'll just stick around. You can just dust me off whenever you want. Be like, was Clay still in our in our cache file or something?
That is an interesting and terrifying concept, kind of. There's something techno horror about it, just capturing a person and putting them in your cache. And it's a little bit relevant to what we were talking about off air, because we were daring to dive into the murky waters of AI. So there's something to it, capturing people, putting them in your folder.
Do you think, I mean, the things that we're afraid of right now with AI, do you think it's going to be the same things that we're afraid of AI like a year from now, 6 months from now? I feel like I remember being at a convention or like on a panel at something speaking specifically about AI in like maybe 2023, 2022. And like, there was still this kind of like, what about AI? And people are like, oh, but now I just can't even imagine. I mean, now it just feels so ubiquitous. It's so everywhere that I don't even want to imagine where it's going to be a year from now.
It begs the question, what are we most afraid of with AI, to be able to fully answer that? And then what do we think people in general are afraid of? I think in terms of creativity and writing specifically, there is a fear of it taking people's jobs or people kind of accepting that as an alternative to real, soulful human fiction. For me, I think that AI won't it won't replace the demand for real authored books. And
Yeah.
I guess about a year ago, I felt even stronger about that. It's like, look, it will potentially replace what we might call, and I've got to think, how can I phrase this properly? But the kind of more repetitive jobs, or the less creative jobs, I suppose, like transcribing things or inputting data, things of that nature. But I don't know. We have seen very, very recently, in fact, AI narrators narrating audiobooks. And I noticed, because I have one of my audiobooks and soon to be two on Find Away Voices. They were like Find Away Voices and Spotify, and now accepting, AI narrators. Now, at the moment, my narrator is going through the book for my forthcoming release, Daddy's Boy. I'd like to exclusively say that I didn't think, okay, well, you're fired. Let's bring AI in. So he still has a job. But I could see there being a worrying trend, for audiobook narrators, that they're going to be not replaced, but people will have them as an alternative. There will be some people who will replace, particularly as the technology gets better. So that would be a concern for me if I
Yeah.
was narrating audiobooks.
Yeah. All the voices that are on your hard drive. You can just kind of like you could just bank all of your author friends and like capture their voices and just put them in a folder file, and then just have the like, I'm gonna pull out Paul Tremblay today, or I wonder what Alma Katsu sounds like right now. Like have them feed their
If
voices through text. It just
if you
sounds so, oh god.
if
I'm
you
already kind of like,
decided, yeah, if you decided to pull out Paul Tremblay, that would be the wrong author to try and rip off, because he very quickly and very vocally, rallied, rightly
yeah.
so, against AI. So you better believe you're getting a lawsuit if you try and pull Paul Tremblay's
Yeah.
not books, voice to narrate your books. But yeah, didn't something happen in Hollywood way before people were panicking about AI? I think maybe 5 years ago now. I can't remember which actor, but I'm pretty sure there was somebody who licensed their likeness for kind of
Oh yeah.
almost deep fake style things. They got paid a ton of money.
Yeah.
So the seeds were already planted at that point.
Yeah. And then we get Chuck Tingle's Bury Your Gaze, which I feel like speaks specifically to that. For me, thinking in terms of Hollywood, how recently with the film The Brutalist, with, oh my God, am I blanking on the actor's name? He just won Best Actor. Adrian Brody. There was a kind of minor little dust up of drama where apparently there was lines spoken in a different language, different accent, different mother tongue, and they utilized AI to kind of they applied Audible AI to his ADR so that it sounded more authentic to the dialect that he was performing. So all of a sudden it's almost like a performance enhancer rendition of AI, which, people started kind of debating, well, that's not really him doing it. And here he is, being nominated for Best Actor. And like, does that somehow negate what he, like his services, he's offering up his talents, and yet he still needs this kind of like extra boost to kind of, seal the deal. And I don't know, like it's when it's the kind of like the kind of sanding down the edges, the sharper edges of something, so that it feels more homogenous or more kind of like whatever you're intending and hoping for. I don't know, like, and that like that probably did not involve him at all. Like that was something that happened like months after his performance was captured on film. So, is he even aware of what's being done to him? And, and the same can be said with CGI and, any other kind of form of special effect. But it just seems like more and more like they're kind of implementing these different kind of technologies to make it like an Uber performance. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I find it pretty terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like who would realize, other than the people who spoke the language, that maybe the dialect wasn't right or something like that. And here's the thing: I get it. I totally understand that when it comes to foreign languages, that we should get the dialect correct. Mm-hmm. We should hone in on a precision there, but at the same time, this is something, like you're saying, that probably happened post-production.
Yeah.
That Brody could have just easily said, well, golly, guys, just tell me. And I could get a coach and we can work it out. It's like you just,
Yeah.
That they have voice coaches, dialect coaches,
Yeah. I guess if it's the pursuit of authenticity or like exactitude, I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is not a new point I'm making here, but I just find it's interesting how these technologies are kind of seeping into other kind of forms or mediums, and whether you as the artist are kind of aware, like if you're the actor, like, are you aware of what they've done? And do you have any kind of recourse for like, pushing back on that? And I imagine once you sign your name on the dotted line, like they can do whatever the heck they want with you, your likeness, your avatar, you name it, your voice, it's all up for grabs.
Yeah, I think the whole AI discussion is incredibly nuanced, and it's something I'm always a little bit reluctant to get into because we're so kind of at the beginning of this journey. Mm-hmm. That, I of course I have the right to change my mind. What I think today may be different tomorrow when presented with new evidence, but it also depends how we define AI, because there's an argument that having the spell check and the grammar check on Microsoft Word is a low-level form of AI.
Yeah.
A low-level form of AI that I would recommend people use as a guide or a suggestion rather than a god, let's say, because the amount of times that it gets things wrong, it's so frustrating. It's like, did you mean to put a comma here? And usually the answer is either yes, I did, or no, I bloody didn't. Don't insert it. It's the opposite of what they want me to do. It's like, are you sure about the repetition of this word? Yes. It's poetry, motherfucker. Yeah. If you weren't a machine, you might know that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, isn't that the catch, where it's like, I think the antidote to AI is always going to be the kind of rough around the edges rawness that comes with text that doesn't make it correct. It makes it real, that it makes it you. And, I feel that like the handcrafted box with all of its kind of cracks and, imperfections. I don't know, like I'm finding more art in the imperfection these days than anything else. Like, I striving for exactitude just has never been something that I've been really proficient at. So I almost am retreating in the other direction, and I'm a lot more raw and maybe a little less polished, much to my editor's chagrin.
I mean, this is something that came up when we were talking to Chuck Palahniuk, that he doesn't really fear AI or see it as a threat because, the error, the deliberate error, the deliberate mistake, that is a feature rather than a bug. That is what will distinguish real art from this machine interpretation of art. And funnily enough, this reminds me of something I saw with Paul Tremblay again. He's come up again. And this was absolutely years ago. I don't even know if Paul listens or watches, if he'll remember, but there was somebody who was kind of calling Paul out for some comparative language, and they were like, "Oh, you used a simile here, but actually, technically, you should have used a metaphor. You should have used as instead
Oh,
of
wow.
like." And pretty much the answer was like, I deliberately made that choice,
Wow.
because I think this is a thing we have with creative writing and with fiction. And to go back to comma placement as well, sometimes we are putting the comma in for the rhythm of the piece. It's not
Yeah.
technically correct, but, sometimes you got to say, fuck the Chicago Manual of Style. This is
Yeah.
my poetry. This is how I want it to sound. And sometimes as well, like I'll find that with comparative language, even if as though might be the grammatically better choice, like it just sounds pacier. It just has that rhythm. So I think it goes back to this idea that many people have said over the years, where it's like, right, know the rules so that you can break them, then deliberately
Yeah.
choose when you're going to break them.
Yes. As someone who feels as if I have failed many an English class and languished in grammar and kind of never kind of excelled much beyond, further than kind of a remedial kind of an understanding of high school, maybe middle school grammar. Like I've been kind of told by family members that like learning disabilities be genetic? That seems untrue to me. But like that we come from a family of, dyslexics, and like it's something that like kind of runs rampant through my particular bloodline. And whether that's true or not, if that's even scientifically feasible or not, I don't know. But like it is amazing how my side of the family has kind of embraced this idea that we're not learned people. We're more intuitive, more emotive, and we take what we've got, which might not be the most, but we make the most of it. And I've always been so terrible at like proper grammar, and like I'm like in my head now, I'm like hearing every English teacher who's always kind of taken me to task for like, that's, I'm the king of gerunds, apparently. Like I just love like my like starting sentences off with ings. And but I feel as if one, if not me, but like someone, like an artist, an author, a writer, a painter, and like you take your kind of shortcomings, you find the limit of your own capacity, your intellectual capacity, your artistic capacity, and you make that is your voice. Like that is you use what you've got, right? And for me, it's like I feel like it's very limited, but I'm just trying to utilize it to like the extent that I can. And that just is a long-winded way of saying like I'm awful at grammar, and I'm awful at like I still like to this day get my theirs and theirs wrong. And I just God bless copy editors who can catch the kind of mistakes, but like I think I've baked in my own kind of lack of grammatical correctness, and that's become kind of whatever you could kind of construe as like my authorial voice, I guess.
We never paid attention in school. That's the problem was,
Yeah.
I never thought that I would ever have to use a grammar tree. And we learned that, we basically like a grammar diagram where you show the subject and the verb and all of that. And they're showing us that stuff in school, and I'm like, I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to use this ever, which was the total lie. And I have my old college grammar, because yes, I did take grammar in college. Because I started wising up going, I think I might need to know some of this shit. And it was still hard. I probably made a C. So, but even going through that book and reading about how to not write passive, it took some little thing I saw online about how not to write passive that ended it after years of being, hey, this is passive, this is passive, this is passive. If word going, did you realize you have a passive statement here? It's like, really? I never would have thought that, because the other 50 in front of it were fucking passive as well. So, but I learned it off one little thing off the internet, and now it's like, hey, now I know what passive looks like. It's just one little trick, But studying that stuff and learning it and reading about it, you can't put it in any type of practical application. So no wonder we didn't care about it. We didn't give a shit about it because it was going to be on a test.
But I also feel like people don't talk the way
this is like, true.
Like, I mean, here's the proof in the pudding. Like I've like been speaking in nothing but broken, fragmented sentences, and like there's no grammar to this. Like this is just complete. Like I'm everywhere, and I don't know. Like I find, at least with the stuff that I'm trying to write, not and a lot of the stuff I like to write, I love to write in first person. But that idea of text kind of mimicking voice, narrative voice, like first person voice, and having a kind of heightened sense of vernacular, or having your own kind of authorial grammar that's different than like, I don't know, when you're reading third person, like you want to feel like there's a certain kind of efficiency to the text that feels like you're in the hands of someone, you're in the hands of a Paul Tremblay. But I don't know, when it's first person, I just feel like it's so much more fun to talk like people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I've got a couple of points at the moment, and I'm trying to segue them into one, but my brain is battling which comes out my mouth first. But I will say, actually, you said that you write more intuitively, and I imagine there's something liberating about that, because you're saying, right, I reject the rules of grammar. I'm just not even going to think about that. Whereas, quite often while I'm writing, there may be a little voice that will be like, it's not grammatically correct. It's like, yeah, fuck off. I know. Shut up. Get out my head. But then the other point is actually in my reading, I would say, when particularly dialogue, and this comes from editing others, really doesn't work. It's when rather than mimicking, reality, the writer is trying to be too grammatically correct.
Uh-huh.
And then that's the same thing with the first person. If you were to have it sound more like writing rather than just a person telling you the story, it's not going to be as engaging.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a really good first person voice, I almost forget that I'm reading, even though I am reading, but it's like somebody is telling me the story. I've become immersed. I've become trapped in the story, but in a good way, not like me trapping you in the cache of my computer.
Yeah, I'm just suddenly having like a Holden Caulfield moment of just like thinking of voices, narrators who have captured me as a reader. And of course, Catcher in the Rye. But Poe, and Poe, I mean, like, these are elevated. This is elevated text. So it's not like talking like we're from this, like, it doesn't have like a kind of patois of like, this is the way we speak in South Philly, or this is like, like it's not even exactitude of vernacular as much as it is just like, I don't know, like it just feels so inherently authorial, like it's that author, that though, like whoever these characters are, they're being manifested through the voice of these writers. And like as elevated as Poe can be and kind of wordy and dense, like I go for that ride. I take that protagonist's hand, that narrator's hand, and they guide you through that story. And it's so seductive. I don't know. I'm all over the place. But yeah, like that's AI to Holden Caulfield. There you go.
I mean, you need to have some personality for the narrator to really come through. I think actually the problem with too much exactitude, if that is indeed the correct word, that's quite a $10 word to throw out there this early into the podcast. But I do think the problem is it becomes colder. It almost becomes more like AI. But I'm trying to think, as you were talking, who are the authors that really just bring me into a story, or what are the stories? And immediately for me, Joe R. Lansdale comes to mind.
Yeah.
It just such a delightful voice that will seduce you into the story. Then you've got Caroline Kepnes, particularly with the You series. That is such an there's such a delightful voice. I keep mispronouncing that. I, I, I just think that there's something just so, again, wonderfully seductive about it. And most of the things that Chuck Palahniuk does, again, you've got that voice. I particularly like the UK writers Will Carver and John Niven, and it's all because they're injecting character into the narrative, into the delivery of the story itself. So I guess that, I almost like this imperfect delivery much better than just like, here is a grandiose piece that is completely grammatically correct. And it's like, yeah, but it's got no soul.
Yeah.
It's cold.
Yeah. No, it's funny how like injecting a little bit of personality into your text, which seems like an obvious thing to say, but like I don't know if I'm thinking of the authors that really embrace it and really kind of sing but don't necessarily call attention to themselves. I was thinking of like Stephen Graham Jones. Like I'm always kind of amazed. I feel like Stephen Graham Jones and Joe R. Lansdale like have a kind of kinship of like they spin a yarn in a way that whether it's third person or first person, like you always get the sense that like there's a storyteller behind the words themselves, that like you could almost close your eyes and like imagine, even in third person, like there is a layer of narrative, like a narrator who is in between the author and the reader, and like it's like an added kind of like, I don't know, layering of personality that maybe feels a little homespun. Like it feels like they're spinning a yarn, you know, Joel Lansdale for sure. But like, I think Stephen Graham Jones does it maybe perhaps a little bit more subtly. And I feel like I kind of became aware of it, like hearing him talk at a live event where I'm like, oh my God, he's talking the way that he writes, which is this added, like, he's just like, like I see him at his desk, you know, like working on the computer, and I'm just hearing him kind of like say the story as it's, you know, being transcribed onto the page. Like it just feels like there's like an Occam's razor of like, you know, his mouth to whatever's on the page. And I don't know. I just love that. I love it.
Yeah. Have you ever read Demon Theory?
How do you get it?
Well, it's hard to get. And I think that's one of the ones that might be coming back, but
Yeah.
I think there's a re-release very soon.
Yeah, but it's listening to the first time I ever heard Stephen talk, I had already read Demon Theory, and so he basically talks like you read Demon Theory. You know, you've got this text, but then at the bottom of the page, and literally every page, there's a footnote, some of which is not real at all. It's all just made up stuff. But that's how Stephen talks, because he'll say something. It's like, yeah, and he was in this other movie that came out in 1974 that was really, really good too, and it had a lot of slasher stuff in it. That was kind of groundbreaking. And then he'll go back into the story, and you're like going, wow, we just got a footnote like in the middle of a conversation. Yeah. And you want to take fucking notes, right? You know, because it's like, it's good. But an author that actually comes to mind who can do what you're talking about in third person and not make himself known for, it's Laird Barron. Laird has this ability to write this prose in third person that has a personality of its own.
Yeah.
And you're talking, usually it's there's subtle changes, but typically it's extremely educated person who has a spice of language. And I love it, because you'll get like the most, you know, scientifically correct sentence. And it's like, and if they don't like that, you know, he'll throw in an F-bomb in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you're like, is this first person? No, this is third person. And I'm like, okay, I want to write like this.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah. I think this is why I come back to the same authors over and over again. It's because I love feeling or vibing with the personality of the author and having that baked into the prose. Like that's somehow imbued into the text, even if it's not like, hi, I'm Stephen Graham Jones, or I'm Laird Barron, and I'm the narrator of the story, so here we go. But like, you feel them almost to this extent that like, I've never put this to the test, and I want to believe I could perhaps do this. But like, what if you were to do like a blind taste test, like a blind reading, where you took a Laird Barron story, a Stephen Graham Jones story, you know, a Caroline Kepnes story, and like you put them side by side, back to back, and you had no idea who wrote what. It was a story that you'd never read of theirs before. And could you be like, oh, that's totally Stephen Graham Jones? Without even knowing, like, it wouldn't be like, all right, one of these stories is a Stephen Graham Jones story, and one of these stories is a Laird Barron story. Like, you would have to like the guessing game would be like, taste this. What is it? Who did this? Like, what is this? Like, and could you vibe on the author? I want to try this.
I think you've just created a game for some sort of horror convention or
Oh my God.
festival. And the two festivals that immediately spring to mind where I could imagine maybe the organizers will go for this are Brian Keene's Scares That Care and
Yeah.
Max Booth and Laurie Michel's Ghoulish. This is the kind of thing they might just go for. But I love it, this taste test. And I mean, you could have, if you turned it into like, I don't know, a 30-minute long or maybe longer actual proper game show, you could have like kind of round one is the easy one where it's like, right, one of these is a Josh Malerman, one of these is an
Yeah.
Anya Alborn, one is a Sarah Langan, one is John Langan.
Yeah.
You have to match, but then it gets progressively harder. It's like, maybe it's like there are 5 stories. One is a Paul Tremblay. That's all we're giving you. And then, by the end, you've just got, there are 10
Yeah.
stories, no names. You've
That would
got to
be
get them.
Yeah.
It would be fun, and like it would be tough because it would be, of course, like, horror readers are very well versed, and particularly in their authors that they love. So you may be hard pressed to like come to the table with like a story that the audience hasn't necessarily read from a particular author. But like now that you mentioned Josh Malerman, and like I feel as if I could intuit a Malerman story without necessarily knowing for sure if this was like if you blind taste tested me on Josh Malerman, I think there's like a pluckiness to his prose that it always feels very nimble and light on its feet, and yet deeply traumatizing. And in intellect, like he's positing these like kind of concepts that are always like mind blowing, but he does them so kind of nimbly. Like I feel like I want to believe if you tried me on a Malerman story, I'd be like, that's Malerman. That I could feel it.
Mm-mm.
I think for the taste test too, it would depend. Are we getting an extract or are we getting a full story? If we're getting a full
Ooh.
story, this is a much longer
Yeah.
game. Is it
I think it would have to be
impractical?
little
Yeah.
samples, little tastes, little nibbles.
Yeah.
With the full story,
but-
you would probably be able to discern who it is.
Malerman
I
would be
think so.
easier with a full story, but if you don't get the full story, the thing about Malerman is he does at times have a distinct mode, but then he will surprise you by introducing a new mode, a new part of his repertoire that you didn't even know he had.
Yeah.
So if you throw in a kind of classic Malerman in more the kind of Bird Box vein, you're probably going to get it. But if you throw in one like he did in Spinner Black Yarn, I'm forgetting the name, but this like almost Russian literature parody, I know if you're going to get that one.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely playing with form a lot more in that one. To this day, Half of This House is Haunted. That story is genius. Like, I love that story. I think it's a brilliant story. He has mastered this form of like taking an idea, taking a concept and exploring it to its infinite degree in a way that kind of, I don't know, like it just shows you the dimensions of the possibilities of something, a thought or an idea, and all of its, I don't know, like all of its traumas. Like it's always like, I don't know. I love his stuff. I love his stuff. I'm a fan of Josh Malerman. It's so strange. Like it is this like, I'm like, every time there's something new from him, it's like a celebration because I don't know what it's going to be and I don't know what it's going to do to me, but it's going to do something to me. And I don't know. That's very rare, but it's so plucky. He's so plucky.
He has ability to take a concept and put characters to it, and it's all organic, and it becomes a story, and the stakes keep going higher and higher and higher because he explores all angles of the concept.
Yeah.
You look at incidents around the house, I don't think he left any stone unturned.
Oh my God.
But as he flipped over each stone, that created new complications and increased the stakes, and it's all done organically. And that's powerful. Very, very, very powerful. You capture that in a bottle, you sell it for $1 million.
I love that book. So Bob, you're the only one who's going to Ghoulish Fest, so you have to do the blind taste test at the Ghoulish Festival.
Foolishly, I have signed up for a panel that even Max doesn't know what the panel's about.
As in, like, they haven't decided yet, or
no,
they're just keeping it a secret?
That was the actual selling point of it. Is don't be a coward. So,
wow,
I had to sign up, and I have no idea. I'm sure that they have something in mind, and it's probably going to be dastardly. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm scared.
Of all the conventions and festivals, I'm really sad I haven't been able to go to Ghoulish. Like, that one just looks cool, you know? Like, everybody has a little bit of that FOMO when it's like, oh, what's going on over there? And I see, like, whenever there's a Ghoulish, because this is the third year? Fourth? Good Lord.
And we don't know if it's going to happen again. I mean, it's in San Antonio, but the main thing is it's in Texas, and some of the writing community just for obvious reasons do not feel safe traveling in Texas.
Yeah, and
it's sad that we've gotten to this point.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be quiet because I can derail this whole fucking thing. So I'm
a relentless optimist that when we go through dark moments, whether in life, whether on a kind of grander global scale, that there will be light moments coming in the future. There will be brightness. I think I have to believe that to, be able to deal with the darkness. So I would certainly hope that, this isn't the end for the Ghoulish Festival. This isn't the end for Texas. There will be better times around the corner. It might take a while, might take 4 years, but I think better times will be coming.
I do believe that. I just we'll have to go through some bad shit. We're gonna have to Andy Dufresne this stuff. We have to go through a tunnel of shit, but we'll be able to see red on the other side.
We really shouldn't have to,
Yeah.
So many good people who don't deserve it.
Yeah.
I'll take your optimism, because I feel like it's getting harder and harder to manifest it myself. So, at least some of us are still accentuating the positive.
I'm doing my best.
And that's going to be sad for a lot of people to hear, Clay, because I think outwardly and by reputation, a lot of people will see you and also Josh Malaman, who we mentioned, as possibly the two most optimistic people in the genre. But of course, we're certainly not naive enough to believe that, you're always optimistic, that there are never difficult days. That isn't reality. Although as I'm saying that, you as a person, very optimistic, but goodness, if we look at wake up and open your eyes, that's an indicator that things are not all rosy, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the dichotomy, right? Like I'm saving the I'm keeping the in-person public facing side optimistic and positive. Not optimistic, just keeping it positive, and saving the bleak stuff for the writing itself. But like that's I think the key difference there is that like I've been really fortunate to have been working with publishers that feel comfortable like sending me on the road and touring, being out in the public and being in person and doing events with people and having people show up like that. Like honestly, particularly in this last year, the value of actually meeting readers and meeting booksellers and meeting librarians and like actually like putting a face to a digital virtual avatar, like it feels like such a genuine gift to have the ability to like meet people, and that genuinely makes me happy. Like I am at my happiest as an author when I have the ability to kind of engage with readers. The writing is painful as all get out, but the and it's not always a given with authors wanting to even like go out and I think we're all kind of introverts or however wherever you fall kind of on the spectrum. I just know that for me personally, I just derive great joy out of meeting people and sharing that, because it blows my mind that anyone would go out for any book event. Like that, like people still, brave, whatever weather to go to the bookstore to like meet an author whose book they've read or want to read. And if I'm lucky to be that author or even be the reader going to see an author, like there's just something so genuinely like intimate to that like I don't know. That's it's community building in the sense that like, everyone like, I feel like online, like people like talk about the horror community. Like for me, I understand that they're like on a virtual level, like it's there, but like for me, I really genuinely see the community when there are events and like the people who come out. And I just love that. So that's, me at my sunniest is just when I get to be around people who want to read spooky books. And then I just write the bleak stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people within the community who we are generally really kind of positive, happy people. There's like a bit of bounce to our personality. But then we're exorcising the demons, as it were. We're leaving that for the page. And I think there's something tremendously healthy about that.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that we've been speaking for 45 minutes and I haven't asked a single question. And that's just because it's so kind of free-flowing and organic and just interesting. So this is a very unconventional podcast for people, but I think, there's beauty in that. But something I would ask, at the start of the interview, and I think it's quite relevant to what we're talking about here, is so it's been just over a year since we last had you on the show. You spoke about not being optimistic about some things. So, I mean, what have been the highlights for the year? What have been your biggest struggles, both personally and professionally? What are you optimistic about? What are you not optimistic about? It's year in review time with Clay.
Wow. Oh my God. Are we talking just the year in general? Like kind of like State of the Union with like, are we talking me personally, like my kind of ups and downs, or just like the way that I'm viewing the landscape?
I think we want the personal
Okay.
Clay's life, Clay's
Oh
personal
man.
life, Clay's professional life,
All
Clay's
right.
writing life.
um, well, we last talked about, it was What Kind of Mother?
Yes.
And I mean, which is so wild because like, if that was over a year ago, I was working on Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, which I mean, it's just, it's always interesting when you're like kind of thinking like, you know, again, this is a privileged existence in publishing, but like for 5 books now at Quirk, I've been able to, be working on the next one while promoting whatever the present one is. And when What Kind of Mother was first out, I was like still digging in to Wake Up, and like, it's it's difficult to talk about that book in particular, Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, because it's so kind of adhered to the political landscape. And I don't know, what else am I going to say about that? Like it's that book has brought me nothing but anxiety, and it's been really it's been difficult to kind of like ferry that one through, shepherd it through, to the extent that like I live in an echo chamber of self-doubt when it comes to that book. I think I'm hearing myself say this, and I feel like I've probably said something similar to every other subsequent book that's come before it. But but with Wake Up, I really mean it. I genuinely, like, this is like a genuine kind of like any, all of the kind of good, the bad, it all kind of exists in this weird kind of like din of anxiety of how the world is taking that book, because the world itself is changing, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. But like, I feel like the volume has kind of cranked itself up to such an extent that like, had I known where we would be in March of 2025, when I started writing this book in 2023, I would almost kind of second guess or doubt, like, is this the right choice? Is this the book I really want to be putting out there in the world? But I've been really fortunate to like have had an opportunity to kind of do a lot of work and tell a lot of stories that I've been like really dying to tell. I got early in 2024, I got a little novelette out, like a little thin edition called Stay on the Line. And that was with Shortwave Books. It had illustrations by Trevor Henderson, and that was like a true joy. I had this novella called Kill Your Darling with Bad Handbooks. I got to work on a creator-owned comic series that I had been really, like trying really hard to get out there. And that was called Seance in the Asylum. And that was with Dark Horse. And that was kind of all prelude to 2025, where Wake Up and Open Your Eyes came out back in January. And that's kind of, that has been the year of like, particular map points writerly wise. And yeah, I mean, it's been intense because all of these stories are very personal in their own kind of personal in their own personal way. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't know if I have any grander point other than just like, I've just been so friggin' lucky to have the faith of these particular publishers, and the ability to kind of get these stories out there, because I don't know, I just don't want to take that for granted.
Do you think that some of the anxiety related to putting Wake Up and Open Your Eyes into the world was because it is the most overtly political book that you put out? You know, there's no question about where you stand. I mean, anybody
Yeah.
who followed you or spoke with you would, at the very least, have an inkling as to your political persuasion. But this is very in your face and confrontational about it. And
Yeah.
as you said, I mean, at the moment, particularly in America, but also globally, it is such a politically turbulent time. It is a time where it feels like we haven't been this divided. There's not much middle ground.
Yeah. I feel like I would try to add the caveat that the book is almost an equal opportunity offender, that it's like it doesn't, it attempts to take everyone to task. It is just a more compelling aperture into the story to start with the right. The conservative, like, for me, conservative news, 24-hour news networks are such low hanging fruit that it's just the obvious choice, because it's the immediate, it's like the kind of like, we all presume, like, oh, let's just poke fun at the, Republicans, or poke fun of the, right wing, like that. And the book does that. But it starts there, and it kind of, I think, evolves into something else, which is to say, we're all fucked, and like like no one gets out alive. And whether readers have the patience to see that through, or if it's just so, I think I have come to learn that, like, I lose a lot of people very early in the book, because it is an experience that, it's not subtle. It is quite dunderheaded in its politicking, but that's all by design. I mean, I'll be frank and say that, like, I don't think, for those readers who want something a little bit more astute with their kind of political criticisms, like, this is not the book for that. This is because when I look out the window, or I read the newspaper, or I turn on the TV, I am personally not seeing the astute, kind of acute analysis of, like, where we are. Like, I see the world kind of burning, and, choices made off of belief systems and things that are a lot more rash and vulgar and profane. And I just wanted a book that kind of embodied that, like, I mean, there are far more intelligent writers out there who have done it, with a scalpel, and, critiqued, like, the American political system to such an extent that, like, it feels like, you've just been operated on by a virtuoso doctor, but I'm here with a ball peen hammer, and I'm just like, dun, 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 and that's because I will be bold and say that I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, as I was reading it, it certainly brought to mind, particularly as it progressed, John Carpenter's They Live. I mean, I felt,
Yeah.
how can you not have that kind of
Yeah.
comparison, as the whole world is falling apart, and you
I love They Live. I mean, They Live is beautiful because it's like, it's this populist. I mean, it's pop culture. It's like sci-fi with WWF. Like it stars Rowdy Roddy Piper, for Christ's sakes. Like, it's like it. you can't get more bubblegum than that. I came here to, like, what is it? Chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Like there is political messaging within that movie for sure, but it is wrapped in the gaudiest, veneer. And it's like, that was, I mean, I believe that was a major studio release. I can't remember who distributed it, but like that's a movie that went wide into cineplexes everywhere. And that was like taking down Reagan, 80s America. Like, and I'm just like, how amazing is it that this movie goes out into the world, and whether everybody picks up on its messaging or not, it seems pretty blatant and pretty, but it was fun, and had a 15-minute wrestling match in the middle of it all. And like, that's glorious, glorious. Ah, I love They Live.
Yeah. And had some of the best lines ever, without these, you look fine. Put these on, formaldehyde face. I'm like, that's total John Carpenter right there.
Oh God. But it's Roddy Piper doing his like best John Wayne.
Yeah.
So like, there's such a cognitive dissonance there, but I love it.
And then Keith, and of course Keith David, who just, just goddamn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have any examples of this, so this could be a faulty theory, but like post They Live, I'm trying to think of any major studio release or pop, like what within pop culture was that kind of blatant in its messaging that you would watch it and be like, oh, I mean, Get Out, maybe,
Handmaid's Tale.
When did the book that was 88?
Yeah, the book came out. I mean, and I think we're at the fifth or sixth final season. I've never watched it.
Oh, the TV series?
Yeah. And so, but I've also never read the book. So,
I mean, oh my
probably
God.
should fix that.
It's terrifying. That's one of those books that you read it now and you're just like, this was written yesterday. Like, this is about today. And it doesn't matter if it was 40, 50 years ago now. It's it still rings true. That's resonance, man.
Thank you for listening to This Is Horror Podcast. If you enjoy the show and want to support us, then please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/thisishorror. You'll get early bird access to each and every episode, and you can submit questions to the interviewee. You'll also automatically become a member of the This Is Horror Discord. And every year, there are bonus episodes for patrons only, such as Story Unboxed, the horror podcast on the craft of writing, in which Bob and I, and sometimes a special guest, will dissect a short story or film and let you know writing lessons and takeaways to improve your own writing. Another great way to support us is to leave us a review on the Apple Podcast app or website. And if you want to watch the video version of the This Is Horror podcast, join us on YouTube, youtube.com/@thisishorrorpodcast. You can subscribe there and get notified every time there is a new video. And however you support us, I thank you in advance. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
Coming in 2025 from I Write at Night Indie Horror Press, Royal Jelly by R.C. Housen, Ruby the Raven was once a fighter with a promising future. Then a brutal injury ended her career. After years of opiates and surgery, she's ready to move forward with her life. She's taken a new job, and while the salary is beyond her wildest dreams, the truths she will uncover are beyond her darkest nightmares. Will Ruby make it out of the building alive, or will the secrets that ooze beneath consume her completely? Royal Jelly is the devil's advocate meets Phantasm for the 21st century. A brutal attack during a peaceful drive through the Irish countryside sets the stage for a grotesque tale of body horror, medical abuse, and occult conspiracy theory. Puppet's Banquet by Valkyrie LaCrue. McLeod Chapman calls it a blissful injury upon the reader's psyche. Fans of Silent Hill, Hellraiser, and Cronenberg's The Brood will be consumed by its exquisite nightmares. Puppet's Banquet, out May 14th. Visit tenebraspress.com for more information.
Now, over on the Michael David Wilson Patreon, I often record walk and talk audio sessions in which I riff on a particular topic for around 15 minutes. These are kind of like mini podcasts on creativity and writing. And to wrap up this episode, I wanted to share the one-liner from the latest session in the hope it would inspire you. And that is, you must decide what it is you most want to do creatively and then create a plan to make it happen. So have a think about what it is you want to achieve with your writing, with your creativity, with your art, and then come up with a plan to make it a reality. And I hope that you will take the first steps on that plan this week, or even better today. Because let's face it, we want to do more of the things that really light us up and spark joy, and less of the things that don't. And speaking of sparking joy, you're going to get a lot of joy sparked when we talk to Clay again, which is in the next episode. So until then, for part 2 with Clay McLeod Chapman, take care of yourself, be good to one another, read horror, keep on writing, and have a great, great day.
This is Horror Podcast.